Welcome back to Nightingales. We're finally here with our head launch. Now it's nothing new, we've used these heads and had many heads on TLR 200s, but we've gone through a lot of research and using them on our own bikes, and because we build two bikes, Specials TLRs, we're about ready to go. But I thought we'd go back into the early days now, just to go through a few things with you. Nothing's changed from when I was about 19. And I'll tell you where I'm going from there with it as well. Right, so I had an obsession with Yoshimura at the time, Yoshimura tuning parts, and I got rid of an RD 400 and got a CB 500 and 504. And what actually happened was, they all coloured, the brown and the black, and four ugly exhausts, a right numb thing. Didn't break as they did at that time, terrible thing. And I went to Earls Court and I bought a 4-into-1 Yoshimura exhaust. I bought a Femsu electronic ignition at the time, an eye-lift cam Yoshimura, and we did a few mods. We took the barrels off, and at the time with a bit of assistance, we bored them out to 605, and we put Ullmann pistons in it. So some of you know what an Ullmann imp was. And bolted it all back together. Rolling roads weren't the thing really at the time. We used to take them to a test track like Elvington and put them through the lights. And when this thing was in its standard format, with your nose in between clock and your feet on the indicators, down bottom straight of Oliver's Mount, it used to get about 93, 94 mile an hour on the clock, which was, as many as you know, were like this, looked like a rev counter, just out of the way. So we'd done all these mods to it. Had it set up by probably two of the best mechanics at the time, one in tuning and one very good into his British bikes, a very methodical man, an engineering background. And we took it back out to Elvington and we got 90 mile an hour out of it. So that's a story saying, you put everything on it because somebody tells you to, and you actually detune it. So we'll get back full circle now onto the Hondas. So back to TLR 200s. So we do trials bikes, and we restore anything from Laverdas, Jotas, Guzzies, right the way through. CBX Thousands I'm still into, 60s, but we've always done trials bikes. Now a colleague of mine started about 6 years ago on a TLR 200 in here, and at first I wasn't taking much notice, because if I wanted to go on a twin shot bike, I'd have probably jumped on, had many 240 Fantics and really got into the 200s, which I still think are fantastic bikes, and I've got one now in the workshop here which we ride. The thing is, you've got to think to yourself, if you get into these and any more special of any bike, well, it's my thoughts, is you've just got to stick to one machine. So you can stock the parts, you can do the mods, and you gain more knowledge. Plus the people around you, the people who come in these workshops, from ex-racers, everybody comes in, engineers, Formula 3 guys come in, Touring Car Championship, and a lot of clever engineering guys. So what I think is, we stuck to TLR 200s and we started with the basics, where the frames, the head stock, the footrest, getting the balance right, then altering the wheelbase to correct it all and bring it in. And then once that was done, it was really looking at the engine side of it. And that's what got us onto our heads and different tuning parts. So when we say, and we get asked this again, we build two machines. They're both TLR 200s. So bespoke, built for you, the customer. And the thing is, there's two different types of machines, though the 200s, is because one's got more bling on it and more expensive parts. So I've said this in some past videos, because it starts to stack up with money. You know, people run out of ideas, so they have to keep on bringing things in and doing things. But the most expensive bike is because you're bringing in a billeted swinging arm, extended. You're also replacing the hubs for bigger hubs, as I've shown in videos. And they're not cheap when they come in, and then you're putting it to a serrated rear wheel for a tubeless tyre. Time you've re-spoked it, the rims on it, and your tyres, then you've got the yoke modification. So really the two models, one's higher spec on more cosmetic. That's all really. The engine side of it, and this conversation goes on, and even till last night we was discussing this, because no matter what, you know, if someone comes in and is, you know, 14 stone, 5'2", you look at him and see his knowledge on trials bikes. Does he just want a ride and clubman B and enjoy it, and it's not going to be too vicious? Or is he a modern rider who wants to ride the same class, but he wants it to take off? And then you're looking at the weight for the shocks, and you're trying to build a bike for the person individually. But again, it all comes down, the last bit comes down to the engine. So what we decided to do on the more standard machine, far from standard, you still get everything done, the frame mods and in-house here, powder coating, cerakoting, polishing, we do all the chemical dipping here, ultrasonic dipping, aqua blasting, everything. What you've got to think to yourself is, you want a comfy bike. So our standard format is one of our heads with a standard piston, flat top piston, not an icon piston, with the bigger valves and the bigger cam. That works well for us. At that level of bike, it's a nice bike with plenty of poke. It takes it from the standard TLR 200, being pretty docile, to a nice bike which revs out, because that's the idea. You're trying to get rid of the original on the cuff which was around from the early days. So what we'll do is we'll talk with different types of guys out there and at different levels. And I say from the beginning, we're not bothered who does this or who does that. We're saying that if you get the right rider in here, not me, and we put a kicker in, we can put one of these bikes on top of the skip, right? And he could ride it at a higher level. But you are making adjustments and more technical adjustments to it. I've tried to keep the videos pretty low key, but I'm just going to go back a little bit to basics again. And I think I said in a previous video that the early days, I mean, I can remember, I've said this before, a bulletin came through from Honda, and it was from the dreaded Honda Cough, which people think they've discovered the wheel again with it. And what it actually was, it was it was Bakelite, and it went from the cylinder head to the carburettor, and it acted as a heat dispersant from the head, which was drying some of the fuel out. That's not the only problem for the Honda Cough, but it was a big problem. You know, you get a hot day and traffic lights, and all of a sudden, or in the workshop, it was in the workshop for 20 minutes ticking over, boom, 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 and then pop, it backfired. Why? And you know, you start going back to things like looking at fuel lines and all kinds of things. So what's happened now in technology is there's some on the internet, and you could put anything in between there, especially if you're in a section, because remember, if you're ramping these things up and they're getting warmer and warmer on a sunny day and you're sat in a section and you are waiting with the engine running, you know, it is one of the things that can cause a problem. So there's these heat dispersant. Well, there's a few. I mean, I've tested a few. Some are just a 3D print, which, okay, is better than nothing, possibly. But I have done the tests on them, put it prior and after. So I was going to have some made up. I had an engineer in who was talking me through some, Bakelite was a brand name, and then obviously there's different names like the stuff for aviation and that. Some proper heat dispersant. And I was going to have them made up, and I did a costing on them, and they were going to be too expensive, ridiculous. So what I did, yesterday, I took this float ball up to about 110 degrees, we were boiling it, and I kept on stepping it down. And I've been doing some, well, I'm using a couple of specialist ceramic coatings at the moment. So I did the float ball internally with one product, and I did the external. And for starters, I took it down about 4 degrees, which is fantastic. So I think what I'll be doing is now, I think I'll be omitting that, and I'm going for float balls done in a coating. As I say, I'm not too worried about the transfer, because what a lot of people have to watch is as well is, we're talking TLR 200 engines with TLR 200 genuine 4-stroke carburetors. So when you've got your flange off the head and it's bolting onto the carb, the biggest problem I have is a lot of these things which I see when people start converting them to 2-stroke carburetors is, if some of the Chinese things, the O-rings are slightly underrated, they're slightly thinner. Now, if you put the O-ring to the actual manifold on any of these Hondas, and you tighten it up to the correct torque, not just someone tightening it up with an 8mm spanner or whatever and crushing the gasket to death, right? There actually is an air gap between the stud and the rubber after it's torqued correctly. So the heat transfer into the carburettor from the engine, you probably know that on the Honda genuine parts, they've got a rubber coating around them as well. But when you actually do this measurement, the heat dispersant isn't actually into the stud of the top end, because I've done the tests on it as well. Because we have an air gap, we do have an air gap. If it hadn't been crushed, unfortunately, this is a Chinese thing, and it's all serrated and rough casting, and the rings, the O-ring in it is wrong. And these are usually fitted to these bikes when people do all kinds of strange things by putting these manifolds on and 2-stroke carburetors, which there'll be people out there who says, you know, I've run a 2-stroke carburetor for, well, so have we, and you know, we've had all kinds of issues. But I'm not saying it's on the 2-stroke carburetor. I'm just saying if you're not more mechanically minded and know the theory on carburation, then you will get stuck on your pilot and your main. You will be continuously looking for different jetting, in my opinion, depending on how technical the person was who sold you the airbox, because that's what follows when it does the 2-stroke route usually. So one of the things I'll be doing is doing this, and I'll actually do the tests on the day to show when I've done this. I've ordered some more ceramic coating and another coating from the States, which they do use in the big multi-bank carbs, and I think I'll be omitting that. So your first thing, if you've got your TLR and it's got a TLR 200 carburetor on it and she runs nice, and you just want to do a few mods to make it better and ride it and enjoy it, that may be one for the future. As I say, I'll gen you up on that when we get to that. Right, so we will get round to the heads in a minute, because that's the whole idea of the video. But if I didn't come this way, what I'm trying to say with that early bit telling you about a 504, I bought a lot of bolt-on bits because somebody told me to, right? So I'm just coming forward now. So this is a typical airbox which comes in now for TYs and TLR 200s and many more. So what you've got to say to yourself with these is, I've gone through this before with, when the man designed this, because let's face it, he wouldn't have just designed it to fit in that gap, right, or in that gap up there, right? He wouldn't have thought, oh well, I'll build an aluminium box, I'll take a copy and fit it there so it fits straight in. He didn't put one of these in like a modern bike for just the reason of putting it in. He must have done his theory on it. I mean, I've always come back to my basics on it. I mean, when I look at these boxes, again, when they've been matched with a tube, like a scaffold pole or your gutter from your house, and then onto a 2-stroke wanking Chinese carburettor for about 20 quid, I always look at the theory. So we'll go back to this air filter box. So did he design it for the curvature inside? Did he bell mouth it? Did he have any acoustic flow rates? Any airflow rates? I mean, the basic the things we always look at is that, you know, did he design it for the positive or the negative airflow? What equipment did he test it in? Did he build his own equipment? Did he build his own airflow meter? He must have done something. He wouldn't have just built a box for putting it inside there. And because a modern bike runs on that, he did that, obviously. Wouldn't be a case of following suit, I don't think. But anyway, we don't use that. And that's in the bin. So we'll go back to the original air filter box on the TLR 200. Many more of the Hondas of this era. And if you look back to the Honda engineers, and I ain't going to get too boring on this, but you'll see the famous flutes in it and all the rest in the top, and people cut them out. But in different models in the States and the Japanese market, there was a lot to do with resonance and the noises, you know, noise displacement. They tried to kill it in the exhaust with baffles and all kinds of things, but they were finding an acoustic vibration from here. So the flute started to take it down. Plus there's a lot more technical humidity issues as well, altitude, a secondary. We know they're restricted, but you get away with that by we build another one of these, and we've got the micron readings and everything because we've done the airflow before and the things that you do with airboxes. So we stick to and it's a great dry source as well, you know, and it also has a fantastic deflector plate underneath, keeping the heat from the exhaust or travelling back anyway. It's great. So that's our theory on the air filter boxes, and we won't be changing. We will be making our own soon, very identical. We're just doing a couple of internal modifications because not only is there's a bit of lack here, but we're not drilling two 16mm holes in the top of the air filter box either. We've got it with somebody who was into air technology on multi-million-pound spray plants, who I've known for many years, and he can do all the figures and give them back to me on that. So we're working on that at the moment. So we'll start with your original TLR 200 head, but present on your bike now. And you might have got this rattle, or a mechanic's told you that you've got a wear in the cam area. Could be from the chain, it could be the guides, anything, but usually it was in the top end. But they've had to done either been poor servicing or lack of servicing. Oils have come on now, obviously, from the early days, but so you've got two choices. This is on like a single bearing, and we've got the cams on a double bearing. But we will be eventually, we're looking at, because this all comes back to this conversation. One is, why do you do this? Have you got an obsession with these things? And it wasn't an obsession, it was just that I listened for 5.5, 6 years of people talking about the same thing and adding bits on and finding fuel in the crankcases, barrels which were like washed out. The worst problems you've ever seen on a single, we're not talking a CBX6 we're working on, you know, the Banker 6 yard, we're talking on a little single cylinder engine, but for the right purpose, because we've changed it, remember, when this was first designed, TLR 200, it was designed as a trail bike. And I never knew when I worked in a bike shop, I didn't really know whoever bought these things, KT 250s, a TY 250 registered for road, an XL, you know, 185, and then you've got your standard TLR 200s. Who really bought them? Never noticed, because it was a trail bike. You could just go off-road for it. Hence now we're modifying the trail and the positioning and swinging arms and so much modification. But these heads were built for an higher speed, so a slight modification to gas flowing and a bit of tweaking, and you can bring them in a little bit. But we may be doing some, taking these out and putting so you can keep do a part exchange on your head, so you can have a double bearing, a cam, an eye lift cam, and some ceramic coating on the cam, which we do as standard, a bit of polishing, a bit of porting, and retain your own valves, the smaller valves, because you know, it's preference. No matter how you build these, it's down to the rider how they like it. I mean, when we come here to valves, you can see the standard valves. I won't give you the tech side on it with the difference. It's on our spreadsheets. But you look at your exhaust valves side, and you look to the new one, and you look to the inlet, and a vast difference. But by putting bigger valves and a bigger cam in it, and a high compression piston, is that right for everybody? No. So we've tried to go in between. So you've got that bump off the throttle, lose the undercuff with a few mods, and have a nice head. So we're going to get onto the heads in a second, but that's what I'm saying. We might just do eventually where we just grind some fresh valves in, new Vitten seals or on the genuine seals, and we'll probably just blast them, vapor blast them, port them, and it'll keep the cost down slightly. And it might be that person's riding experience, because they might just be on standard piston, smaller valves, and they just want an high lift cam in it. It's not set in concrete, because we've had every single bike, different high compression pistons, big valves, different cams, different heads we've tried. Obviously looked at bearings, you know, different ratios of bearings as well under heat. But this format for us works well. The great thing about it is if we want to, we could just adapt it if we wanted to put an high comp piston in it. But that is preference. As I say, the carburation essential. And as I say, we're not discussing 2-stroke carburetors, we're discussing 4-stroke carburetors on our machines. Remember, we're selling them retail and longevity. The man who buys it might not have a workshop full of jets if it was on a 2-stroke, and he might not have the knowledge to keep on jetting it or realising if it's lean or if it's rich. So by keeping it just simple, it works for us. What everybody else does, fantastic. It is fantastic. So that's on these heads. So we'll move on to our heads, which we're selling out now. So right, we're finally there to talk about the heads. So they're under our Velocity Pro range, and what we're doing here is we assembling the head again and ready for sale, and we'll just show you what it comes in the kit. So the kit gets polished head, polished bowl, valves are coated in a specialist coating to keep the heat inside instead of going down the stem. We actually then gas flow these right the way through. We put a billeted rocker cover, tappet cover on. This is another ceramic specialist coating to get heat away from the cam area, which is good. All on stainless steel. You get stainless steel bolts, including the carburetor bolts. You get 2 rocker box tops. You get this winder as well, which we're doing it as a bit of a feature. You can change it straight away, because all we're asking is when you get your cylinder head, you're going to have -1 of these, which you'll have at home on your own head, which you could fit on it. That's just a gesture of goodwill. It looks quite cool as well. But you'll also have to place your original cam chain sprocket. And I've said this before, there's a reason for it. If your engine's done 2,000 mile or 35,000 mile or whatever, what we're trying to do is we're trying to match that cog with the one on the crank. When we build our new engines and cranks, then we'll put new at the bottom, new at the top, and a new chain on it. Right, so it's just trying, like your chain and sprockets on a bike, you're just trying to match up. You wouldn't chain a duck sprocket on the front, leave a good one on the back. So that's the only thing. So that's the only thing you'll have to put on. And if you don't like our cover, then you can put your original cover back on it. So completely in the kit like that, with these flanges as well. Now what we've done is we've kept the flange on these to 8mm, right? It's our, it comes with the collet as well for the flange. We've just had these made, stainless steel, everything's stainless steel, recessed, so they just take a gasket, depending what gasket you get, obviously there's different thicknesses, so what we tend to do is put them on, run it for a couple of hours, then just torque it up again. All you'll have to do on the machine itself is when you put the rocker cover back onto here is a dab of silicone round. We've got you some good instructions, very basic. Line it up with the timing and you're ready to go. The camshaft are cerakoted in-house here as well. Everything's about longevity. We're trying to make things last longer, right? So the double bearings, they run smooth, and these are also ceramic coated as well. So that's about the last thing. Double springs, as standard as they are. Valve springs, the seals, and we do keep the cam and the valves in stock as well, should you ever need any, as a backup. And that's it basically on the head, and as I say, they're ready to go now. We've just had a few we put out, which went to France prior to as advertising, these, and they'll be on an internet site shortly. Again, full instructions, and we'll go from there on the cylinder heads. The last thing as well, just a little thing, when we started building our own CDI units, really for the rev limiter as well, and just put on our own machines. It's a typical example, because our mule machine here, which we're putting eggs on, and our CDIs to check them, we had original on the CDI unit on it. It was a bit temperamental at starting. This is with the original head on, but when we stripped the head off, the head was perfect, the valves were perfect, there was no leaks or anything, and the plug was pretty good. So we put another under ignition on it of the same age, and the bike changed completely. It actually ran up and down the road here. You could feel it's got a bit of life in it. So as I said, when we build our own ignitions, we then put our own ignition on. It was the same. Wheel popped up a little bit on the power. You know, it's probably just wear and tear. It's a big discharge capacitor inside these CDIs, gets some age on its back, you know, and your spark gets a bit weak, or it's certainly intermittent in some cases when they get warm. I've had them on the Honda ones. They've been fantastic. Same with all the other ones out there what I made now, selling on the internet sites. They're all fantastic. I've had them when I've been fault finding with them, when I've run them for 20 minutes and had a misfire, just get a freezer tin and spray them and cool it down, and they fire back into life again. So that's another trick. If you've got one and you've got an intermittent problem and you don't know which way to turn with it, if it's on standard format, I'm on about 4-stroke carburettor, 4-stroke filter box. Just make sure your ignition is, and the main thing of course is the earthing on the frame. Any bad earth, it's critical that you get the earth correct and tight on these. They can oxidise up, so that's the last tip. The only other one I would say is with the bores and the barrels. Again, with us having so many different problems over the customers' bikes and ones in here, we go one oversize on these, and we put a flat top piston in it, and we found them fantastic. There's not much skirt on these, there's not much give, and you can't really do anything else. You could go one, but it's getting a little bit thin on that skirt. I have had them, and I will say it was on a 2-stroke format carburation setup. Not saying that was anything to do with it, but it stunk of fuel. The fuel in the crankcases. We had lots of ridges down it. Lots of ridges down the bore. I've never seen it, not like a top ring groove. I'm on about ridges. And then we had one decided to lose the side of the barrel itself, which went downstairs. Luckily it just fell into the oil well. It could have gone round the timing chain, chewed everything up. But as I say, if the bottom ends, if it's good on this, you want to just put your head back onto the new head onto this machine, and she's running. You want it a bit more bump, then you can look at one of ours. And as I say, you can always phone us for any advice as well. So until the next video, thank you very much.